All right, welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I am Buckeye Boggs. That man over there is Chris Wilds, and today we're going to be doing another one of our Big Ten previews. This one being Sparty. That's right, Michigan State is on the docket tonight. Well, Chris, I don't know if it was just something in the water in East Lansing last year, or the fact that the transfer philosophy finally caught up with Mel Tucker. But the 2022 Michigan State Spartans were nothing like the 2021 Michigan State Spartans. So
No.
much so that even though I might have won a little bit of money off of them last year, uh, it was even worse than what I predicted it to be for them. And they had just a horrendous year in 2022. So, what's going to be very interesting is how does this team bounce back in 2023? But before we do that, Chris, let's go ahead and take a look at the Spartans historically, as well as how they did last season, before we turn the page and look and see what we can expect from them this season in 2023. So Michigan State was 5-7 last year, 3-6 in the Big Ten. This is Mel Tucker's third season there in East Lansing. Their home field is Spartan Stadium, a capacity of 75,005. All-time record, really good, 727, 479, and 44 for a winning percentage of 599. Their bowl record, almost 500, 14-16, and they have won 11 conference titles over the year. Last year, they started off decent with wins against non-conference opponents, Western Michigan and Akron, before losing on the road at Washington. They then came back home and got beat pretty soundly by Minnesota. They went on the road and got beat by Maryland. They then had Ohio State come into the stadium and whoop their butts before somehow winning a double overtime game against Wisconsin at home. They then get handled easily on the road against rival Michigan. They then win on the road last year at Illinois. Again, how'd that one happen? They beat Rutgers. Then they lose at home in double overtime to Indiana. And then they lose to their quote-unquote rival, Penn State, 35-16. The over-under last year was 7.5 games. Chris, you went with the over at 9-3. I took the under at 7-5. I was successful. You were not, but they only came away with 5 wins last season. Chris, this was kind of one of the teams that surprised you last year. You thought they were going to be much better than what they were. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that the success that Mel Tucker had in the transfer portal in year one, and you thought he's going to do it again.
Yeah, I really did. And obviously, the transfer for portal giveth, and it taketh away, Eric, and it tooketh away all their wins when they didn't get the quality guys they got the year before. But you know what? Kenneth Walker's awful hard to replace.
Yeah.
I mean, they struck gold with Kenneth Walker, and they rode that to a really successful season in 2021. And last year just didn't work out. And I'll tell you, when I look at some of these names that are on the roster this year, Eric, remember that line in Major League? Who are these effing guys? That's kind of what I'm feeling here, you know?
Uh-oh.
Cross them off then, you know? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they've still, I think, got some talent at the running game, but, I think Jalen Berger is definitely, a talent in the running back position.
Yeah.
But, and they have some guys up front. I'm sure you're going to talk about this. They got some guys up front that have some experience there. But I'll tell you, Eric, I actually, I don't know. Maybe I'm too skeptical on them this season. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I don't see them having a great year. And of course, their schedule. You realize they've got 4 teams that finished in the top 10 last year?
Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a second. But
that's brutal.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our expert from the Bacon Wire podcast. It's a Michigan State podcast, Spartan Dog. He's going to join us here. He's going to tell us all about Michigan State. We have a really good conversation about the rivalries and where Michigan State kind of sits in all of that. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what we can expect from them. So here he is. All right, guys, welcome back to the OHIO podcast. As you can see, I'm joined by our guest. We are with Spartan Dog from the Bacon Wire podcast. They cover MSU, Michigan State Spartan football on the Big Banter Network. Spartan Dog, thank you so much for joining us here on the OHIO podcast.
No problem, Eric. Thank you for having me. And I have a bone to pick with not just you, but the Ohio State football program as a whole, right? I don't know like what kind of language level you're going for here.
We're family friendly.
We're family friendly.
Yes.
Okay. Good to know. I'll keep that in mind. What is Ryan Day's problem with us? Because it seems like every year since he took over, he's beaten the ever-loving snot out of MSU. And then the last couple of years, there's like nothing left for Michigan. I've always treated Ohio State like as an enemy of my enemy kind of thing, right? But yeah. I'm not kidding. I don't feel that same like reciprocation, right? At least from Urban, I kind of felt it a little bit. Like he would kind of lay off the gas a little bit, right? Like at the end of the Antonio years. But it's been like no mercy. Like I don't get it.
So let's go back to the Urban. He laid off the gas too much. That's what happened. No. So yeah, you bring up a really good point. Why is it that we seem to just the last couple years lay the wood to some pretty? I mean, gosh, the 2021 Michigan State team was ranked what when they came into the shoe?
I think they were ranked like 8th.
Yeah, and then by halftime it was 49 to like 7 or nothing. And I'm like, what just happened? Like I was at that game, I was shocked. And then we literally go out and lay a stinker against the team up north, as we like to call them. So, yeah, that's a good point. But, you guys were the thorn in Urban's side. You go back and you look at our previous coaches. Tressel struggled against Wisconsin. Urban struggled against Sparty. There's really no, it's kind of odd, outside of he would just lay a stinker every now and then, the game against Purdue, the game at Iowa. But he dominated old hairball up there. So yeah, this is interesting. That the tides have turned on us the last couple of years, and there's a lot of angst in Columbus, Ohio right now about the Ann Arbor team.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyways, let's start with where Mel Tucker's at with the fan base. Like we kind of all like Mel Tucker. He coached at Ohio State when Tressel was there. He's a Northeast Ohio guy. He's a Cleveland guy. We like Mel Tucker, but man, it seems like maybe the direction he took it with the transfer portal, guys leaving, the issue that happened in the big house, which everybody has that issue. Let's just face it. You guys aren't to blame for that, in my opinion. Everybody has that issue. What's the common denominator there? What's going on with Tuck?
So I'll preface my comments with this. I am a lot more pessimistic. I am a lot more pessimistic than the majority of the fan base, I think. I recently updated my bio to MSU football's Frank the Tank, which if you know anything about Frank the Tank or the Mets or anything like that's kind of my relationship to MSU football right now. I think as I get a little further away from the season, right, and I kind of have a little separation from just getting the knife twisted in me week in and week out. I think ultimately what last season came down to was a lack of depth, and that's ultimately one of the parting curses of Mark D'Antonio, right? Is you had 22 guys that could get you bowl eligible, maybe to the New Year's Day bowls or best case scenario New Year's Six. But if one of them goes down, the guys at the 2 deep, 3 deep on the depth chart are just, they're not Big Ten players, and that's nothing against them. They're great young men, and who wouldn't take an offer from a Big Ten school if their other offers were from Group of 5 programs. So I think that was ultimately some of the issue. I do have some problems scheme wise with some of the stuff MSU did last year, but ultimately, my motto this season is the water's got to find its level, right?
Mm-hmm.
If MSU goes 9-3 this year, let's say, then where's the baseline expectation, right? So I got to be able to see. I have to be able to see Mel Tucker drag this team to 7-8 wins before I can go, okay, now let's start shooting for Indianapolis, I think.
Okay. So that makes sense. So let's go here then. What is the basement and what is the ceiling for this year's football team in your opinion?
The basement I think is probably 4-8. I think for this team. I think if the wheels fall off again, there's injuries to guys there's guys at the top of the rotation, especially on the trenches like they had last year on the defensive line. It could get real ugly real fast. The ceiling I would probably place at 8-4, 9-3. It's just a matter of what the other team brings to the table when they come in. My other motto is if Mel wants to keep the band together, he's got to go 8-4. So he's got to win the games he should win, and he's got to steal one from Washington, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State.
Is the seat a little bit warm? I mean, that contract is whoop.
Yeah, I think I don't know about Matt Ishbia's liquidity right now, in terms of what he's able to shell out in terms of a potential buyout. Like I said, last year I'm kind of willing to chalk up to the situation he inherited, right? In terms of Mark D'Antonio after the 2016 class, kind of self-destructed in very brutal and very unacceptable ways. There was kind of a feeling among the fan base that he quit kind of recruiting, that he just kind of took a step back and was just content on recruiting Ohio 2 stars and hoping he hits on 2 or 3 versus putting in the legwork and finding the Connor Cooks, the Kirk Cousins, the Jeremy Langfords, right? Guys like those. But I don't think his seat's warm right now. I think if MSU misses bowl eligibility again, and he doesn't make any changes at the coordinator level, I think there's going to be they're going to try to start igniting it a little bit. But I don't think his seat's any warm right now, and that's coming from me. Which if you're a regular listener of the Bacon Warrior podcast and you follow me over here, you know how surprising that is for me to say.
So let's talk a little bit about this team. Who are some guys that you can hang your hat on as these are going to be players who the Big Ten's going to know by the end of the year?
Yeah, I think ultimately you kind of look around, right? And there were some massive departures this offseason, and those can't be you can't talk about this team without talking about that, right? Peyton Thorne, ultimately, I think Peyton Thorne transferring was a good thing for the program. I think a lot of the people who follow the team closely are with me in that, but losing Keon Coleman is a big blow. There's no denying that. I think Trey Mosley is going to be the guy that everyone is going to be like, oh, when you're lining up against MSU, watch out for this guy. He's kind of played second fiddle to Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman and Jalen Naylor, right, in his time here. But he's one of those guys where it's like, if you get him the ball, if you throw the ball in his direction, he's either coming down with it or he'll break up the interception for you. He's just one of those Mr. Reliable. He runs good routes. He has sure hands, and I think he's going to really shine as wide receiver one.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the defensive side of the ball, I'm really excited to see Jacoby Windman back from this team. He transferred from UNLV, and he had his season cut short due to tunnel nonsense and some injury stuff. But he came out of the gates firing. They were everyone kind of had high expectations for him. Now that the vibes around the program are a little dampened, I think that's really going to help Jacoby kind of recover and kind of get back to the form we saw him before he kind of got banged up and before the tunnel.
Beautiful. So let's talk a little bit. Let's have a little bit of fun, because we share a commonality, and that is our disdain for everything Ann Arbor. So let's talk a little bit about the incident. And I know this is going to be hard keeping it family friendly for you, probably. But let me tell me if you think if I saw this correctly. There is a history there of instigation taking place from the Maize and Blues part. And whether that was what was intended by that young player or not, the history of it is to the point where what did you think was going to happen is kind of how I looked at it. As a Michigan fan, what was the fan base's reaction to that? And just give me your overall feeling of where you guys stand in that rivalry right now with Michigan.
So here's what I'll say. There's the disdain on both sides runs deep,
mm-hmm.
right? Michigan, from the university's very establishment, the University of Michigan fought against the establishment of a land-grant institution in the state of Michigan. They fought against the reclassification from Michigan State College to Michigan State University. They fought against MSU's Big Ten membership bid.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very deep-seated rivalry, and it's in Michigan's. I'm trying to keep it family friendly here, so I'm taking long pauses. I'm trying to find the PG. I'm trying to find the PG in here. There's an air of superiority from Michigan fans, from university officials that ultimately I think kind of colors the rivalry in a different way, right? Where
mm-hmm.
I think
mm-hmm.
the rivalry between you two, as someone who was on one side of it and is now on the other side of it, I do think there is a little bit of mutual respect there, even though it is very contentious, right? When MSU was dominating this rivalry, there was never any respect. It was always like you got lucky. If Rich Rod wasn't an idiot, if Hoke didn't blow it, if Devin Gardner could throw the ball, if the punter just held on to the ball, if this, if that, if the other, right? So I do think that history kind of colored the tunnel incident, and ultimately the responsibility falls on the MSU players who kind of
lost control,
right? Like I'm not I'm not excusing their behavior in any way, shape, or form. It's one of those things. You lost. It's a rivalry. Like, you should expect the other side to talk smack. You just kind of take it, you internalize it, you put it on the bulletin board for next season.
Mm-hmm.
Taking it to that level was unacceptable. However, I do think I was proud of how the university and how the staff handled it. Right? They didn't have to suspend. They didn't have to suspend the players while there was an investigation. They didn't have to do anything. And I think the staff holding those players accountable, while it was painful and while it ultimately probably cost us a chance of bowl eligibility, it was the right thing to do, and that I'm proud of the staff for. The treatment of it by the other side, I think, was a little ridiculous and a little cartoonish. Saying that no apology was ever going to be good enough, talking like they ended this kid's career, wanting criminal charges pressed against them, right? I do think that was a little harsh, a little extreme, a little ridiculous, and I think that was just that's like another chapter in the book of Michigan not respecting Michigan State as an institution.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because, as someone who follows the Big Ten like I do, and knowing that, a lot of our listeners and a lot of Ohio State fans, outside of what happens inside the Horseshoe or whatever stadium Ohio State's playing at that Saturday, they don't really follow or understand what else is out there in the Big Ten. There is a ton of heat between Sparty and the team up north, and I'm all for it. I've jumped on the Notre Dame bandwagon hate with them too, man, because I'm like, at this point, let's just all gang up together and take down Jim Harbaugh, because I can't stand the guy. But that's beside the point. I just wanted my listeners to kind of get a feel for what is happening between Michigan State and Michigan. I think it's deep, like you said. It's very deep. It's very deeply seated. And I can appreciate, the level of disdain, because I feel it too for as an Ohio State fan for them. Let's talk a little bit about where we're at this season as far as Ohio State and Michigan when they face each other.
Sure.
I looking over Michigan State's schedule as I pull that up real fast. We play each other, I guess it'd be week, 10 again, so late in the season again, at East Lansing, on the road, in your house. By then it's going to be, or no, wait a minute, it's at our house. It's in Columbus this year, excuse me. Where are the fan base at as far as, okay, is there a chance? Is that kind of what you're thinking? You kind of said it earlier. If we can take down Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, or Washington, that's kind of that big win for us. Is there any expectation there, or is like what would be the expectation from you as a Michigan State fan coming into Columbus facing Ohio State this year?
I think personally the expectation is competitive at halftime, right? Because that's something that hasn't been the case since Mel Tucker has taken over. If you look at the 3 games that Ohio State and Michigan State have played, they've all been over at halftime. So I think coming out of the locker room in the third quarter with a puncher's chance, even, I think I would consider a success. And what happens after that happens after that. I'm not expecting to go into the shoe and win. Not with, I'll ride with my guys, but it's not the team to do it. So I want a game within 2 to 3 scores at halftime, and I can kind of go, okay, like this is trending in a favorable direction for me.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's fair enough. I'm always curious to kind of get people's opinion, because, Under Ryan Day, we have, outside of that last game of the year, we have done a very good job of not slipping up. Urban Meyer slipped up.
Yeah.
Almost every single year, there would be a game where you would go, huh? Like, what was that? And so I'm interested to always kind of gauge the other fan bases as far as where they view Ohio State as at when they play them. Do you, as a Spartan fan, still think of Ohio State as the top dog in the Big Ten? Or has what has happened at the end of the year, in your mind, has Jim Harbaugh and the Loserines supplanted the Buckeyes as being the top dog in this conference currently?
So I kind of look at it as I kind of see it as a 2-horse race, right? I see it as Ohio State in Michigan, and then there's Penn State kind of in that second tier, along with, you could put Wisconsin in there. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with Wisconsin as well, so we'll see then. We'll see there, but yeah, I kind of view I kind of view Ohio State and Michigan as 1A, 1B in the Big Ten Conference, and everyone else is just kind of like fighting for table scraps. It'll be interesting to see like how it shakes out moving forward. Obviously, with the changes coming to the Big Ten Conference, adding USC and UCLA, getting rid of divisions. We'll see what happens in terms of that. But yeah, as the conference is currently constructed, it's like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and then it's kind of like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. One last question, since you brought up the scheduling thing. Did the Big Ten get the whole protective rivalry things right?
I mean, I'm kind of happy. I don't know. I would have liked to see the land grant trophy game kind of preserved as a rivalry. Ultimately, I like the idea of protecting these rivalries officially, and not just kind of having it going year by year. We're going to schedule it, because that always gives a team the opportunity to kind of back out. If internal momentum is going in a not favorable direction. But yeah, I would have probably liked to see 3 protected rivalries per team. And I would have liked to see kind of USC and UCLA kind of brought into the fold more, like maybe like a lot of people were pitching like a MSU USC rivalry, right? Like the battle for Troy. Just kind of manufacturing some rivalries to kind of welcome these teams into the fold. I think I would have liked to see.
Fair enough. It's interesting. Kind of Penn State. I feel like Penn State got the shaft, man. They didn't get to protect it with us. They didn't get protected with you. I'm like, and then Iowa gets 3. To me, it didn't make any sense at all. What they were trying to do there. I don't know. I don't get it. Spartan Dog, tell everybody where they can catch you and the Bacon Wire podcast and so they can listen to some more Spartan talk.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter for now. I'm also on Instagram Threads now, because that's, we'll see what happens there. I'm at Spartan Dog 97. You can follow Bacon Wire at Bacon Wire. I live tweet every game, MSU football and basketball. We're anywhere you can find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those good platforms. And yeah, thank you for having me, man. This was a lot of fun. It really tested my vocabulary trying to keep it PG, I gotta say.
Well, you can have me on your show and you can cuss at me all you want. Is that fair?
That's fair. Perfect.
All right, guys. We'll have him back later in the season. That is Spartan Dog. Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
All right, we want to thank Spartan Dog for his expertise in breaking down the Spartans. Let's take a closer look, Chris, at this roster in 2023. Let's start with the offense first. You've got Noah Kim, redshirt junior, who I think is going to be at the helm, but there is some question marks surrounding that. Running back, you brought him up earlier, Jalen Berger, redshirt junior. I think Berger's a pretty good running back, and given what we might see here on the offensive line, this might be their bread and butter. You got JD DePlane, a senior, Nick Samak, a senior, and Spencer Brown, a redshirt senior. So 3 seniors across the board there on the offensive line, along with redshirt junior, which means he is a senior academically, Brandon Baldwin, to go with a redshirt sophomore, which means he's a junior academically, so a third-year college player, and Gino Vandemark. So that's a lot of experience up front again, which with a pretty good running back. At tight end, Malik Carr, a redshirt junior, so again another upperclassman. And then out wide at the wide receiver positions, you have Trey Mosley, a redshirt senior, Monterey Foster Jr., a senior, and Christian Fitzpatrick, a redshirt junior. That's a lot of upperclassmen on that offense. And there, the name you see right there in Jaden Reed, well, that's the reason why that's in gold is because he was actually drafted in the NFL. So unlike Indiana, who we previewed 2 days ago, Michigan State actually has a few guys who did get drafted in the 2023 NFL draft who they're trying to replace. And I think Trey Mosley can do that job in replacing Jaden Reed. I think he's a pretty good wide receiver, although he wasn't in our top 10 in the Big Ten coming into the season, Chris. I do think he is someone who was kind of just on the outside, maybe looking in. Your thoughts on our prediction of what the Michigan State starting offense looks like? I think this is going to be a run-heavy offense.
I think it's got to be. And I do think Mosley, like you said, has a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. Not sold on Noah Kim at the quarterback position.
I'm not either.
And I really feel like you said this is a team that's going to lean very heavy on the run. It's what was successful in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's what they got away from a little bit last year, and we saw the result. I think they've got to run the ball if they're going to have any chance of doing anything this season. Um, because I don't believe in Noah Kim. I don't think he can get the job done at the quarterback position. And Mosley, while he's a great talent, you know, it'd be awful nice if they had somebody who was a second receiver to just take a little bit of that pressure off, make it so you weren't getting him double teamed all the time.
Michigan State kind of has they kind of have a history of doing that, finding somebody at the wide
Yeah,
receiver position that you aren't expecting, who doesn't come into the season highly touted, and then by the time the season's over, he's a draft eligible candidate. And so I wouldn't be surprised if one of those other guys does step up. But the big question mark I have is who can get him the football at the quarterback position. I think this
yeah.
is a very weak team in that regard. Could be wrong. We'll see. But that's just kind of what I see right now. Let's flip over to the defense now, Chris. So defensively, let's start up front in the defensive line. You got Avery Dunn, a redshirt junior. You got Simon Barrow Jr., a redshirt junior, and Derek Harmon is a redshirt sophomore. And then we finally have our first transfer, the tuck transfer rule, as I like to call it, and Tamiz Adelaide, a redshirt sophomore. Very talented, but also very young. Um, I'm not sold on this defensive front. I think it's pretty
No.
weak, to be honest with you. At linebacker, you got Jacoby Winmer, a senior, and Cal Halliday, a redshirt junior. I think that's probably the strength of this Michigan State defense, to be honest with you, is the linebacker position. They're going to get plenty of tackles, but it's probably because most of the time running backs are going to be in the second level of the defense, in all honesty. At cornerback, Chester Kimbrough, a redshirt senior, and Samar Melvin, a redshirt senior. He's a transfer, and they're going to have to replace Amir Speed, who was drafted last year. And at at safety, you have Darius Snow, redshirt junior. He's pretty good. Dylan Tatum, a sophomore, and Jaden Mangum, a sophomore. So they're playing a 4-2-5, just like Indiana. Defensively, there's some holes here. I don't think they're nearly as strong as they've been in the past. And given the fact that I don't think the offense is nearly as explosive as what we've seen before, I'm a little weary of this Michigan State roster here coming into 2023. Special team wise, Stephen Rusnell, a redshirt sophomore, will be doing the kicking, and Ryan Eckley, a redshirt freshman, will be doing the punting. And Bryce Barringer was actually drafted from
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State. Defensively, what's your thoughts there, Chris, on Sparty?
Well, I'm with you. I don't think the defensive line is great. I think the linebacker position is what's going to have to hold this team down. Um, Widman, I think, is or Widmer is gonna the definitely the leader on the team. A little surprised, Halliday has kind of got that second spot, and I kind of thought we might see Gayo Teote in there this year in that second spot, but apparently not. Darius Snow, the safety, I'm kind of wondering, is he related to the snows that came out of there? Because there's a couple snows that came out of Michigan State back in the 80s. It was Eric was the basketball player. Was it Percy was the I think it was Percy was the
I don't
linebacker or something.
I don't know that. That's a good question
But
for a
yeah,
Spartan Dog when we
yeah,
see
maybe you
him
got a
next time.
legacy guy in there.
Maybe.
But yeah, as I'm looking at this team, Eric, I don't have a lot of hope for them. I could see a lot of games where when Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State get in there against them, you may see teams racking up 50 points.
They're a little bit more saltier than Indiana. I
I
think
will.
they got maybe a little bit more machismo is a good kind of a way to put it. A little bit more street cred that I think is going to give them a few more wins than what the Hoosiers are going to get. But if we're looking at Big Ten East, I've got Indiana at the bottom, and then I've got Michigan State and Sparty fighting for that next spot.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Michigan State and Rutgers and Sparty fighting for the next spot. That's kind of where I'm
yeah,
at, and I'm not so sure that I wouldn't put Rutgers ahead of them.
yeah. I actually think I did, if I'm not mistaken. As I recall, I think I only gave Michigan State 3 wins, maybe.
You did. Yep.
Yeah, and because I just don't see it.
Yep.
Uh,
All
you
right.
know,
Let's take a look at that schedule while you're thinking about it. So let's take a look at it here real fast. All right. They open the season September 1st at home against Central Michigan. Chris, that should be a win. Yes.
yeah, should be.
September 9th at home against Richmond. That better be.
If not, Mel Tucker's in a whole lot of trouble.
September 16th at home against Washington.
This is where the chaos begins because they have 3 very tough weeks, I think, in a row right there, Eric.
Yep. At home against Maryland. That's probably an L.
Yeah,
I think Washington and Maryland are both L's, and then they go on the road at Iowa. That's probably an
that's
L
probably an
too.
L.
So they're going to go into their bye week at the first week of October, in my opinion, 2-5 and 0-2 in the Big Ten. You agree?
Yes.
October 14th on the road, coming off a bye at Rutgers. This is a coin toss here.
For me, the fact that it's at Rutgers, kind of gives the Scarlet Knights a bit of an advantage.
Okay. I think I might have them actually pulling this one out there because I do have one more win than you. So October 21st at home against that team up north. This is probably a solid L. On the road, October 28th at Minnesota. This is a Minnesota roster that's been turned over a little bit, but I still think the Golden Gophers have more to offer here.
Yeah.
Now we get in the month of November, and they are home against Nebraska. I'm kind of feeling that there's a lot of good buzz around Nebraska. I think this is a game the Cornhuskers, if they're going to make bowl eligibility, are going to have
They
to
need it.
come and win. They're going to have to get this win on the road. So we'll see if Sparty can hold home field here. Then they travel to the shoe, Ohio State. In the last few years, as Spartan Dog like to point out, we have stomped a mud hole in them since Tucker has been there. And we did it actually ever really since Ryan Day's taken over, and as he
Yeah.
pointed out. At Indiana, November 18th. Again, this is a big win for them. 2 of those games that I feel are big wins are on the road for them. At Rutgers, at Indiana. That's going to be tough. Home against Nebraska. Those 3. And then they finish off against Penn State at home. That's a solid L. I got them somehow eking out a 4-win season. You've got 3. Vegas says it's a 4.5. I'm taking the under. You're taking the under.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not confident in that 3 wins. I wish I could be more confident, Eric, but like I said, the Big Ten East, very, I think is arguably the strongest division in all of college football.
Yep.
And you take that, and you, like I said, you got four teams on their schedule who finished in the top 10 last season. That's pretty tough for any team.
Mm-hmm.
You won't see an SEC team playing that schedule unless it's Vanderbilt. Just think about the results there,
Right.
because I think that's what you're going to see.
Oof.
Four top 10 teams is too much for this team that just doesn't have enough.
So let's go ahead and take this over to Brandon from Big Banter and see what he thinks. He is our betting expert for Big Banter. Brandon, take it away.
So I'm Brandon Jensen, lead betting analyst at Big Banter Sports. Glad to be on the show. Michigan State up next at 5.5, over at plus 135, under at minus 155. The secondary, it's still bad. And they lost their top quarterback, Peyton Thorne, to Auburn, top receiver to the portal, and they face four teams that could finish in the top 15 with Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, and Penn State. So, I mean, that's four losses in my books as it is, leaving 8 games to pick up 6 wins. I don't think Tuck's coming this season. I think they can get better, but I don't think they're going bowling. So give me the under.
All right. Thank you very much, Brandon, for that. And so now, Chris, we come into our final thoughts for good old Mel Tucker and Sparty. What's your final thoughts going into this season for the faithful Green fans in East Lansing?
I think that Mel Tucker needs to find a way to pull a couple upsets,
Mm-hmm.
because 3 wins after the season they had last year is not going to be acceptable. Taking another step backwards is not going to be acceptable. And I know they've got this big contract with him for all this money, this ridiculous amount of money they gave him. For a guy who really, if you look coming in, was a losing coach when they hired him. I think that even with that being said, I think he becomes on the hot seat if he doesn't at least get to a 5-win season this season. And I don't see it being possible.
I feel like in a way, since the expectations are so low there right now, that this could be a solid rebuild year for him. And by rebuild, I mean almost hit the reset button and reset the culture. The incident that took place in Ann Arbor, just like Spartan Dog and I were talking about, I don't blame Michigan State for that. Now, they went overboard.
Yeah.
They absolutely went overboard. But the common denominator and all the issues that happen in that stadium is that team that plays in that stadium. That's the common denominator. And so I can't put all of that on Mel Tucker's guys. And as Spartan Dog said, they went over and above to make sure that was taken care of. And now he has kind of a clean slate to kind of reset the culture and maybe more in his image. And I think the other thing that he's done is he's realized you can win by the transfer portal and you can lose by the transfer portal. But when you win by the transfer portal, you destroy all your good faith and work you've done in developing your homegrown talent who you have recruited.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be a 3 to 4 year process of resetting that, because he came in, he felt like he couldn't win with the guys he had there. And, D'Antonio didn't set him up well. Let's be honest.
No.
And so he had to go to the transfer portal. And one of the worst things that happened was he was successful at it. So he went back to that well a second time and it was dried up. And so now he's got to kind of reset things. And so I think this is a hard reboot that's happening in East Lansing. I do not expect this to be a uber successful year. I will be flabbergasted if this is a bowl team.
Oh yeah, I don't see that even being
if he
possible.
He gets to 6-6.
They need to extend him.
He might be the Big Ten Coach of the Year.
He should be. If he gets to a 6-win season, given his schedule, given the talent or lack thereof that is on that roster right now, he should be the Big Ten coach. He should be the national coach of the year
Wow, I wouldn't go that far.
because that this team is that bad. And you know what? Maybe it is a good chance for him to like you said, hit the reset button. And you know what? If you're going to hit the reset button, I'd start running some of them young kids out there.
Yeah,
See what you've got.
show some hope. But he's especially on offense on the offensive line, he's got all them upperclassmen. Can they somehow eke out a couple field goal type game winning type situations? Kind of like what we said about Indiana, they're going to have to play in a phone booth. They gotta get this low scoring, suck the clock, almost run the old Northwestern style of offense where by the time the game's over, you're like, wait a minute, we only had 8 possessions, and we had to punt on 4 of them. We kicked field goals on 3, and now here's Sparty getting ready to kick a game-winning field goal on us. So that's the type of winning formula for this team. I do not think they're going to outscore guys. They're going to have to win in the teens a lot.
You don't think Noah Kim's going to be out there putting up 350 and 4 touchdowns a game, Eric?
No. But, with a good solid running game, you can win like that. Trestle ball, baby.
Yeah, you can, but,
Is the defense good enough? That's the question.
You've got a true freshman and a redshirt freshman, I think, right behind Noah Kim, if I'm not mistaken. So if Kim struggles early, do we see him go to that youth movement? And I mean, I would almost like to see it. See what he's got in these kids.
If you fall behind to where you're not going to make a bowl game, you almost owe it to yourself.
Yeah.
To do that, to go that route. All right, guys, that's our preview for Michigan State. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe, ring that bell. It really does help the channel. And if you're a Michigan State fan, tell us why we're right or wrong in our previews. Are we too unfair? Are we being too critical of your program? Did we miss something that you know about it? We need to know. We're not following this program every single day. We're following it from afar as Buckeye fans, and so that's kind of our perspective. But we thank Spartan Dog for coming on here from Big Banter to give us a little bit more expertise from your side of the fence, if you will. And we're rooting for you to take down that other rival that you guys got there. So that's always like we always say. We're Ohio State #1 and #2 who was ever playing that team up north.
Yeah.
So if that's you guys when you play them, we're rooting for you. So, all right, guys, that's our show again for this one. Be on the lookout. Purdue, you're on the clock. You're next up, Boilermakers.
Or don't.
The thorn in our side. And we're coming. Chris and I.
We're going to be in the house.
We're coming your way this year. Looking forward to have a good time with you guys. All right, until next time. OH.
IO.
Go Bucks.